last lecture of the semester that will last us the next 5 days of class. What we are going to do now is different than how we have approached this class from so far. What we're going to do is divide the class really into two categories, because we're talking about the last 50 years of American history. Now, it's kind of scary when talking about 1960 and as history, and I'm born 14 years later. So you've got no, this isn't history, this is journalism. Okay? A lot of the things that we're going to talk about are things that are not yet answered. When we talk about the JFK assassination, there's still some things out there that haven't been laid to rest. When we talk about Vietnam, there are still some things out there that have not been laid to rest. Okay? What I'm going to do, though, during this time period is divide it, as I said, into two sections. You have the Cold War, which will take us all the way up through 89 and lay the foundations for current days. And then you have civil rights, which began a little bit before this started, but in the interest of keeping everything together, we're going to talk about it now. The first thing that we need to start off with in this time period, though, is the 1960 election. We have to get started. This is an interesting election because it is an election of many firsts. It is the first time that a president is absolutely barred for running for a third term. Washington had established the two-term tradition when he stepped down after his second term, lest he be crowned a king and be back where they started. But FDR had broken it. After the tradition had been broken, there was nothing holding it together. Since there was nothing binding there, the 22nd Amendment would be proposed and would be ratified in 1951. The 22nd Amendment bars the president from running for a third term and can serve no more than 10 years. Now, why is that 10-year clause in there? If you are the vice president and your president dies, is assassinated, what have you, you take that position. You take his turn. If there is more than 2 years remaining on that term when you take over, you will not be allowed to run for a second term on your own. You can run for the first one, but not the second. If you come into office with with under 2 years remaining, you will then be allowed to serve a total of 10 years, 2 terms. Now, what happens if it actually occurs? We don't know. It's never actually been tested. Now, it's kind of like what has got everybody up in arms with this birther movement. You know what the birther movement is with President Obama? They want to see where he was born because there are conflicting statements about where he was born, and you must be a citizen of the United States, a native-born citizen of the United States to be president of the United States. That's why Arnold cannot run, that's right. But here's the deal. What entity prevents that from happening? You would think, well, the Federal Election Commission is in charge with that. Well, shouldn't they have done something with this? He's already elected. This came out beforehand, and the way I look at it is he ran against Hillary Clinton, probably the meanest, dirtiest player on the field at the time. If it was actually true, she would have come up with it, and just boom, it would have been done. But I can't run because there's a trigger clause in the 22nd Amendment that says it will go into effect 7 years after being ratified. Well, it's ratified in 51, so 58, boom, goes into effect. I can't run. It's also important because it's the first televised debate. It's the first time a debate is going to be televised over the airways of president. Now, what they're saying here is not very important because for the scope of the class. But what I want you to look at in just a second here is look at the actual presidential candidates. Let's get a picture of JFK. He hasn't gotten up there yet. But look at JFK. Look at Kennedy. He's got nice hair. He's handsome. He's debonair. When he shows up to give the debate, he is approached by a makeup artist and said, Mr. Senator, I'm going to be putting makeup on you so you're not all washed out, so you look healthy. And he says, oh, okay, that's fine. Do that. So they did that. They put that on him, so he gets up there and he has, he looks like he knows what he's talking about. Uh-oh. And then when you get to Kennedy and you get to Nixon, Nixon refused to have any of the makeup put on. He didn't, I'm a man, I ain't going to put on no makeup. And he had just recovered from a really bad case of the flu. So he was very sickly and pale to begin with. And he had a bad case of, well, he's dark-haired man, had a very bad 5 o'clock shadow. And compare these two men. Which one looks like someone who you would want to be your president, and which one looks like someone that on a full moon is going to come and try to eat your children? Yeah. The people who watched it on television said JFK won. What's interesting is that the people who actually heard it on the radio said that there was no contest, that Nixon trounced Kennedy. There was no doubt who won. But the first televised debate is going to be held. Kennedy is the first Catholic to win the position. We've never had a Catholic elected president before him. We have never had one since. It is going to be so bad for him that he is actually going to go and attend a meeting of the General Baptist Convention in Houston in 1960 and give a speech. In the question and answer period afterwards, a man is going to say, how do we know that you are not going to take orders from the Pope? He says, if it would make you feel better, I will write out a letter telling you I will not take letters from the Pope. Will that make you happy? And the man said, absolutely. Is that bad? When he does get inaugurated, he is going to give the famous speech, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Possibly one of the greatest inaugural addresses that have ever been given. I kind of skipped there. I got them backwards. Election of 1960, obviously. Richard Milhouse Nixon, vice presidential candidate to vice president to Dwight D. Eisenhower is the Republican nominee. And from a contentious primary battle, JFK is going to win the nomination over the Texan Lyndon Baines Johnson. LBJ is going to become his vice presidential candidate, which we'll talk about in a minute. Now, in the last couple of days of Eisenhower's term, he was still very much angered with what was going on in Cuba. He was not able to get any form of resolution. So he signed off on a plan from the CIA to train and arm Cuban refugees to go into Cuba, gather up a rebellion, and then overthrow Castro. When JFK comes in, he finds out about this and signs off on it. He says, you guys are good to go. On April 17th, 1961, the Bay of Pigs invasion begins. Bay of Pigs is a little area, a little bay in Cuba, where they are inserted. Within a day, they are completely defeated. JFK refuses to send re-support or air support, either one, for them. All 1,500 of these Cuban nationals are captured or killed. Just sets things up for even bigger problems yet to come. In 1961, Khrushchev is going to call for a summit with JFK. Khrushchev is very upset with something that is occurring. And it is something that has come to be called the brain drain. The brain drain from Berlin. Now, at the end of the war, Berlin was divided between West and East. The Soviets controlled East, and France, England, and the United States controlled West Germany. West was free, East was Soviet. At this point, there was no wall, there was no divider, there was nothing there. You could freely come and freely go. From the moment the war ended, World War II ended, up until 1961, 3.5 million Berliners had gone from East Berlin to West Berlin. They had switched sides. Now, anytime that many people do something like that, it is going to hurt. But Khrushchev was more upset with the fact that this really showed the weaknesses in communism. Because the people that left were the scientists, they were the professors, they were the doctors, they were the highly educated people who went for their freedom over in West Berlin. He realized this needed to stop, or else it would spread, and if it spread, then communism would be revealed to be the one-trick pony that it was. Can't do anything with it. So at this conference, Khrushchev and JFK meet for hours on end. One of the greatest things about being in this day and age is a lot of this information that was previously withheld is now becoming public. In this conference, new research has come out that shows that JFK was completely unprepared for dealing with Khrushchev. Khrushchev completely and utterly dominated him at the negotiation table. JFK was he had foreign policy experience, but the problem is by this time, the injuries from his back that was suffered from the PT-109 collision with the Japanese destroyer, or actually the Japanese destroyer collision with the PT Boat 109, and a degenerative back condition that his dad had kind of helped him get past so he could get into the Navy, has made it so that he has to stay drugged up all day. Because of this schedule, he was not able to take his medicine at the time. It was needed. And because of that, he was just completely, in some instances, out of it. There were some other problems, too, that he had, that he was taking medicine for. But those probably did not really hurt him at this time. The main problem he most likely had was a bad case of syphilis. You know what syphilis is? It's an STD. And usually what it is a rotting away of a part, or parts. You know, and it is usually the parts that get you the STD that rot off. So, yeah. Kennedy was, he was a ladies' man, and when he couldn't get a lady, he, how shall we say, rented them. And when he rented them, he was not very big on prices. So he, $100, no, how about $10? So after this summit is over, JFK, realizing that he has lost a lot of face with Khrushchev and the world, goes back home and does some military posturing. He calls up the National Guard, he calls up the reserves, and gets them, out to drill. In retaliation, Khrushchev is going to erect the Berlin Wall. Now, they do it overnight. Originally, what happened in 1961 is that they just lay barbed wire all along the line. And then between 1961 and 1965, they improve it. Next thing, between 1965 and 1975, they put concrete walls up to the ones that you know of. How many guys have been to the George Bush Library? Okay, have you seen the wall there? Yeah. A piece of the wall, yes. Actual Berlin Wall. You're not supposed to touch it, but I've yet to see somebody who does not come up there that lived through that time period and not touch it. Now, problems in the Cold War are going to get a little bit more difficult in 62. 1962, October 14th, a U-2 plane, not the band, a U-2, which is a high-altitude spy plane, is going to spot in Cuba some interesting things. Well, they turn out to be missile trucks, missile delivery, missile equipment to build missile silos in Cuba. See, Khrushchev has been upset for a while because one of the problems that the Soviet Union has is that if they want to attack the United States, they have to actually send missiles over to the United States, and they don't have anything that can do it. However, the United States could put any missiles in any of their allied areas and their buddies' backyards and do what? Dominate. Bomb them back to the Stone Ages. Okay? When we get to Vietnam, we'll find out that bombing back to the Stone Ages is not very hard. But see, we had in the 60s, the early, actually since the 50s, we had missiles in Turkey, and they were aimed at the Soviet Union. Khrushchev did not like this. So, through the growing relationship between Cuba and the Soviet Union, they are going to come up with an agreement that allows missiles to be placed in Cuba that can reach the United States. This is known as the 13 days, because what's going to happen is that once this is found out, JFK is going to go on the television and he is going to alert the American people to what is happening and order a naval blockade all around Cuba. Now, Khrushchev is going to get very upset about this and is going to say, if you blockade us from free enterprise, we are going to take that as an act of war and we will declare war against you. JFK says, bring it on. Okay? On the 22nd, we are going to discover that there are ships coming from the Soviet Union heading down to that area. Our military intelligence says that they are missile components. JFK lets Khrushchev know that's not going to be acceptable. Khrushchev, we don't know exactly why this next thing happens. Okay? Khrushchev sends 2 telegrams. One says that they will not allow the United States to stop them from trading with their allies. Second is he says, we won't send anything to you if you take your missiles out of Turkey. Okay, I'm sorry, we won't send anything to Cuba if you take your missiles out of Turkey. Well, here's the deal. The missiles that are in Turkey are old. They're old generation. They have been slated to be removed. They have been ordered to be removed, but because you know how the government works with the bureaucracy, it runs very slow. As a result, they had yet to occur. So JFK tells his brother, Robert F. Kennedy, who is also the Attorney General, go speak to the Soviet ambassador and say, we'll take them out. We will take the missiles out of Turkey. He does so, and on the 28th of October, those freighters turn around and go back home. This is probably the closest we are going to come to nuclear war with the Soviet Union at this time period. Domingo, what?
Cuban Missile Crisis?
Yeah?
13 days, is that the same?
It's the same thing. Cuban Missile Crisis, 13 days. I put 13 days up there because it was what it was also known as. I should put Cuban Missile Crisis, you're right. But I also do it because it's a Kevin Costner movie called 13 Days. And as we all know, Kevin Costner's in bad movies means what? It's the same thing. It's an oxymoron. You can't say that. Tautology.
You didn't mention anything with the embargo?
The embargo is going to come around the same time. Yeah. After the Bay of Pigs invasion ends, man, it is crazy. Because what's going to happen is I'm going to say the government goes a little on the deep end. I think if we would have kept our doors open to them, it would have kind of settled itself, because you keep flooding the markets with goods, they can't withstand capitalism. JFK is going to order all these crazy things to be done. He says, CIA, take them out. They're going to try to slip exploding cigar to him. They'll blow his head off. He loved scuba diving when he was younger, and they tried to get him to put on a wetsuit that was had almost like a defoliant in it that would cause all of your hair to fall out. Because apparently in Cuba, they're thinking, that whole machismo factor, the macho-ness. You can't be macho if you're completely bald and no facial hair. So even bribed his lover to kill him. She took the money and didn't.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, he's still alive, too. Here he is still alive. He outlived JFK. He outlived Eisenhower. He outlived LBJ. All of his opponents, he's outlived. I'm actually waiting because as soon as he's actually dead, I'm getting myself a Cuban cigar and smoking it in his honor. Because come on, this guy survived everything. Seriously, huh?
Think you paid Lee Harvey Oswald?
I don't think he paid Lee Harvey Oswald. We'll get to that in a minute, okay? That's kind of where I'm especially vague, because I don't even really want to get started on all that crud, All right, let's talk about Vietnam. What?
You ever spoke to real Cuban?
No.
Don't want to get started on that either.
Oh, really? Are they? Well,
You get them in our bed.
all right. Oh, you can get them. You can get them anywhere else. You can get them in Canada. Let's talk about Vietnam now, because that's where we're going to spend a little bit of our time. Vietnam. Originally, well, actually, I can't say originally it was the French colony, because they were there before the French. It had been, for several hundred years prior to World War II, a French colony. It was known as French Indochina. Okay? During World War II, the Japanese invaded, drove the French out, and as a result, they took over. The Japanese did. After the war, they are driven out. And with all this talk about freedom for everyone, independence for all, supporting nations, blah blah blah, a man by the name of Ho Chi Minh, who had been educated in the West, is going to go to the San Francisco Conference for the United Nations and talk about all the wonderful things that were promised that he was ready for his people to do, to stand up, to take back their land, and to be an independent nation. This is one of those times where you wish you could go back in history, grab the people that are going to give the response, and give them a good slap across the face. All right? Because he is not allowed to speak. It is a French possession, and therefore a French possession is what is going to stay. Now, if that isn't bad, Ho Chi Minh is also a communist. He wasn't a big communist beforehand, he is now. He goes back, and for the next 9 years, wages a war against the French, guerrilla warfare tactics. They would attack, there would be a counterattack by French forces, and then they would retreat to the woods, the forests of Vietnam. Okay? Now, Ho Chi Minh's followers were known as the Viet Minh. Viet space Minh. M-I-N-H. The Viet Minh. Okay? On March 13, 1954, the French are going to be attacked at Dien Bien Phu. They're going to counterattack and expect that the Viet Minh guerrillas would withdraw into the forests. However, Ho Chi Minh has been waiting for a day like this. See, he's got some friends up north in this place called China. And they have given him some things that he hasn't had before. Well, what things, you may ask?
Boom, boom, six, big ones.
No, not boom boom sticks.
Soldiers.
No, not soldiers.
They don't get
Although I'm sure there were some there.
They don't get artillery.
Huh?
They don't get artillery.
Gives them some howitzers, gives them some artillery, and completely changes the face of warfare in Vietnam. This is the first set-piece battle in the war. The French respond, and they are not defeated. However, they are surrounded. They cannot defeat the Viet Minh forces, and they cannot escape. The United States and Great Britain are going to get involved because we have a mutual assistance pact with them. But we are going to do is we are going to send supplies. We are not sending troops, although we do have people there. Okay? Since like 47, we have had people there. The first guy dies in like 47. He is a member of the OSS, Office of Strategic Services, who's going to grow up to become CIA.
Well, sort of.
They're the direct successor.
Okay.
And what happens here is the assistance provided is not sufficient to get the French out of this situation. On May 7th, after 2 months, they are defeated. France calls for a meeting in Geneva to discuss what to do here. At the Geneva Conference in 1954, Vietnam is divided in half. It's not what they wanted. France is kicked out. Vietnam is divided between, at the 17th parallel, which is right here on the map, and the area between there is what is known as the DMZ, the demilitarized zone. In the north, it will be communist. In the south, it will be free, backed by the United Nations, the United States, and supported by them as well. In the north, it will be ruled by Ho Chi Minh. Now, Ho Chi Minh was supposed to take all of his men and pull them up north. He doesn't. He leaves a good number of his followers there to convert, make fellow followers, and to try to work against the South Vietnamese government when it comes time. South Vietnam is going to be ruled by a man by the name of Ngo Dinh Diem. Diem is backed by the United States. He is supported by the United States, and the only reason he is president is because of the United States. Now, Diem was supposed to allow for presidential elections in '56, but he doesn't. Why?
He wants to stay president.
Because he would not win. Ho Chi Minh would have won. He did not want Ho Chi Minh to take over the Vietnam government, and therefore said there will not be any elections. To prevent Viet Minh attacks, or to prevent Viet Minh infiltrating these Vietnamese cities and towns, or heck, rice paddies, he is going to start a new policy. Diem is going to start a new policy, and that is called strategic hamlets. And basically what this is rounding up all the Vietnamese people and putting them in places that aren't prisons, except they have walls, and they're on the inside, and they don't know anyone, and there are guards, and they can't leave. But it's not a prison.
It's a relocation camp.
Relocation camp, that sounds good. Now here's the problem, though. You take these people off their land that they've been on for millennia, and you put them in a new place, they're not going to be happy, correct? And if they're not happy, And there's a guy right next to him that says, Ho Chi Minh would never do this. He wouldn't treat you this way. What's going to happen? They're going to start thinking, hey, this Ho Chi Minh guy's a pretty good guy. So the policy of strategic hamlets kind of foreshadows the problems we're going to have. Now let's talk about Kennedy. Eisenhower had a little hand in Vietnam at their changeover meeting that they had between JFK and Eisenhower. Eisenhower and his secretaries, everybody that was at the meeting said, oh, we talked about it, we discussed it, we knew what was going on. We talked about Vietnam. JFK's people? No, man, we didn't know anything about Vietnam from that meeting. We didn't hear anything at all. So it's one of those things that, we just still, who's right, who's wrong. But here's the problem. Kennedy. For Kennedy, wars were good. Wars were moral. Wars were just. They were clear black. There was clear white. There was good against overwhelmingly evil forces. What had he grown up in? Grown up in World War II. He had seen World War II firsthand. He had known about what happened to prisoners of war that the Japanese took. Okay? He knew about the concentration camps that Hitler had put the Jews in. This is not that type of war. There is no overwhelming national security reason to be there. He inherited this concept of containing communism from Eisenhower. And as a result, he felt that was the way to go. Believed that was the way to go. Now, he realizes that the Army of the Republic of Vietnam needs some help. So what he's going to do is he's going to send in advisors. In 1960, when he comes into office, there are only 700 military advisors in Vietnam, South Vietnam. By the time 1963 ends, there are over 16,000. And these are advisors. These are non-combat roles. Now, what type of roles are they doing? What are the types of things are they doing? Well,
They're training the South Vietnamese army. They're training pilots. They're training.
Yeah.
They're training them to go to war with the North.
They're trying to get the military to be able to stand on par with the North. And the problem they're going to discover is it ain't going to happen. Okay? It's not going to happen. The first attempt is going to occur in 1961, and this is Operation Farmgate. And the Air Force is going to send advisors over there to train Vietnamese pilots. Okay. Here's a problem for it. Let's think about this. When you think of Vietnam, what do you think of? A Vietnamese citizen, what do you think of? Somebody in Vietnam. Rice farmer, got the hat on, right? Education level.
Rice farmers.
Not rice farmer, okay? All right, rice farmer, whose entire family history can be traced back to rice farmers. Here's an F-4 Phantom. You're going to learn to fly this thing and understand how it works. And the answer to that is?
Like a dog go down.
It ain't going to happen. I would not use that analogy. Because I'm trying to avoid racial overtones here. And try to give it strict facts. So I'm not going to use that analogy. But it is not going to work. Another problem. Pilots. How many guys know an Air Force pilot? Okay. What do they look like? How high? How tall are they?
About 6 foot.
Okay, about 6 foot. Usually it's between 6'8" and 6'1". That's
6'8", 6'1".
5'8", 5'8", 6'8". They're not gonna. I would hate to be in the ejection chair with that guy. 5'8" to 6'1". Okay. All right. Here's the deal. They wouldn't get it. You got to be 5'8" to 6'1" for most planes, most jets. Okay. How many Vietnamese people do you know 5'8"?
I'm gonna go with 0.
They're going to put blocks on their feet so they can reach the pedals, all right? It's not going to work. It is not going to work. We're going to do in the same year, we're going to launch Operation Shoe Fly, in which the Marines train pilots as well. They do not work. Now, in 1963, the problems inherent in training the Army of the Republic of Vietnam are just a whole concept of the military doctrine that was going to be used was going to be completely shattered. The operation of the Battle of Atbac, which is outside of Saigon on the Mekong Delta out here, is going to completely reveal all the problems. Although the Army of the Republic of Vietnam is led by a Vietnamese general, they are being directed from a spotter plane above the battle by United States Army Lieutenant Colonel John Paul Vann. Arvin is going to take to this battle several APCs. Over 50 helicopters are going to be used in this battle. And basically a whole bunch of other supporting vehicles. Over 50% of those helicopters are going to be brought down by the Viet Minh forces. There are going to be about 800 casualties on our side. We'll go ahead and call it our side because it's getting ready to be. And it's going to be an utter and complete disaster for the Army of the Republic of Vietnam. You're not going to get them to fight against people who are their same, it's their brothers. Okay? You're not going to get that to happen. You cannot wage a war in Vietnam with World War II tactics. It just will not work. Now, at the same time this is going on, we have a problem, or we have a growing sense of turmoil in Vietnam. Vietnam is a Buddhist nation. Diem's brother was a bishop of the Roman Catholic Church. Diem was, Nho Diem was Catholic as well.
So there's a war in Vietnam that there are Buddhists, there aren't Buddhists pacifists.
The Buddhist people supposedly are pacifists, but you're talking about the communists as well. So, ideology can trump just kind of. Now, Diem in 63 orders all Buddhist flags, or orders that Buddhist flags not be flown in honor of Buddha's birthday. Okay? Roman Catholicism supposedly is the official religion of Vietnam. This turns into a nightmare. There are mass riots. A radio station that is broadcasting the news is stormed. Arvin shows up. Army of the Republic of Vietnam shows up, fires into the crowd, kills 8 citizens.
That is the way to win support right there.
And in response to this, President Diem, orders all Buddhist temples in South Vietnam closed. By this time, JFK realizes it is time for Diem to go. He had backed him as a senator. He had supported him at the early part of the war, but it was obvious that Diem is not able to get the job done. As a result, Kennedy talks to the CIA and says, do something. CIA always willing to get excited. Speaks to ARVN generals and says, listen, GM's got to go, do what you have to. Know what they have to? Boom! They assassinate GM. Now, that wasn't exactly what Kennedy was expecting. However, it is what he got. But what he thought about it, we don't know, because 21 days later he's going to have his own fateful encounter with a bullet coming his way. In November of '63, JFK was in Texas, and he was in Texas for a very important reason. He was campaigning. He was very unpopular as a president. I know you're like, wait a minute, how can you say that? This is Kennedy. He is, like of presidents, there's George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and then Kennedy. Well, the reason Kennedy is so popular is because he was cut down in the prime of his life, and you didn't have to see him grow old. When you think of Kennedy, you think of him as a young, debonair, handsome man. He's a great leader. Throw syphilis in there if that makes you feel better. Okay. He was what? He's a very weak president. In the '62 election, he lost a lot of support in the midterm election. As a result, he goes to Texas to try to keep it in the fold. While he is there, he is in a parade in Dallas, and a man by the name of Lee Harvey Oswald is going to take 3 shots in as many seconds from a bolt-action rifle from the 6th floor of a book repository. Now, he was a Marine. He was a Marine. He was able, he's going to flee to a theater where he is going to be found. And when he flees to this theater, he's going to be arrested. He's going to be taken. He's going to be charged. And then, as he's being taken out, a man by the name of Jack Ruby, who is a nightclub owner, is going to shoot him.
It was trained by LBJ.
Now, because of all the damage done, you get a police officer shot, you get JFK with a lot of wounds, and you get the governor of Texas, John Connally, is going to get shot in the arm as well. You have a lot of conspiracy.
By the same bullet.
One of the things, one of the things that has come out in the last, I think, 5 years or so, is that by this time, JFK, his back had gotten so bad that in order to get up in the morning, or to actually stand, he had to have a steel back brace on that encompassed everything. It was almost like armor. And if a bullet hits you in the back of the head and travels down into your body, it's going to ricochet around and do a lot of damage. As a result, you get a lot of this magic bullet theory. Of course, my magic bullet theory goes back to a movie that came out in the 80s, which was Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Because they have these bullets that are cartoon bullets that he shoots them, and they go the wrong way, and somebody goes, hey, you're going the wrong way, and they just turn around. So that's what he used, I believe, to shoot JFK. And the bullets, like, well, wait a minute, they went in, left, right, do as much damage as possible. Now, JFK's vice president was in Houston at the time, coincidentally, and came up to Dallas rather quickly, and got sworn into the presidency that same day aboard Air Force One. His name is Lyndon Baines Johnson. He is a Texan. Now, LBJ would order a commission be created to ascertain if there was more than one person involved. He would appoint Chief Justice Earl Warren to head the Warren Commission. They would reveal their report in 1964 in which they said JFK was killed by one person.
LBJ.
I don't think it was LBJ with the. It wasn't LBJ with the rifle. There are so many conspiracies about that. It is absolutely amazing. I think the documents that actually really exist, the ones that we need to know about, we'll find out, but we have to first get to where they're deposited, and that is on the moon. Because you think about it, we went to the moon after he died. We haven't been back since.
I think that